Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are, whatever you're doing, and welcome to an AI special for Anfield Index. It's an interesting time right now, isn't it? It's not the standard reporting of winning every game despite performances. There's a few questions for Arne to answer, and everyone's got their thoughts, be it on the defense, the midfield, the attack, the system, the formation. Is it a crisis? Is it a blip? There is a lot to consider. So when there's a lot to consider, you have to get the right person in, don't you? You have to call the man from the mix zone, just back from a trip to Istanbul, Mr. Lewis Steele. How are we, sir?
I'm very well. I thought you were going to make a joke there and say you have to get the right man. David Lynch wasn't available today, sadly. But yeah, I'm good, thank you.
Good. Well, David Lynch, off on a stag do in Barcelona, I believe. So, we all live different lives as patch journalists, don't we? But we will get into it, people, straight away. We'll be talking what is on Slot's docket. We'll be looking at every single element of the team, not in granular detail, but just to see what are the key themes that are kicking out. And, I mean, let's just get right into this, Lewis, because it is filling all the column inches at the moment. Arne Slot's inbox, and I've seen a million articles, and it's understandable right now that Sam Maguire had out there Arne Slot and the weight of expectation, under a lot of pressure right now with the signings and what's expected. I even saw for yourself that you had the inquest into what's going wrong, a number of problems to solve as well. You're going to have to give us a flavour, Lewis. What are the number of problems that you mentioned in this article?
Well, where do you start? There's a lot of problems at the moment with Liverpool, and I think we could see that a month ago that there was something not right, and it almost felt wrong to say that Liverpool were, in a bit of a pickle because they were winning every single game, and those last-minute goals, the late drama did paper over a few cracks because you go home from the game or you turn off your TV and the only thing you're thinking about is, wow, that last-minute goal. But when you sit down and watch it back on Match of the Day, or if you watch it in full the next day, you do realise that Liverpool were there was something missing, and it was hard to put the finger on what. But even if so you don't want to be too reactionary based on two defeats, but it's not. It's based on the whole season. If you go back to the Bournemouth game and the Community Shield, they were leaking chances, and Konate's form was a worry, and the new fullbacks haven't properly settled yet. And it's just the same. Konate has been a shadow of his former self. The midfield has looked disjointed, I think is the best word. Florian Wirtz hasn't really got going yet. Isak isn't fit, and Salah hasn't done anything near what he was doing last season. So there's a lot of worries, and there's obviously there's more that I haven't touched on there. I don't think it's a time for complete panic because it is only 2 defeats, and they could easily go and beat Chelsea on Saturday. But there's definitely work for Arne Slot to be doing on the training ground this afternoon.
Yeah, it does feel that way. And you will have got, and I don't know, feedback on your YouTube channel, comments or on various social media sources, because it kind of swings, doesn't it? There'll be the eternal optimist who is saying, well, we are top of the league still. They'll also be looking at the Champions League table. And despite sounding weird that we're in 17th place, we're only 1 point outside the top 8 qualifying spots, which is all that really mattered. Others will be looking and saying, back-to-back defeats, that's a crisis. Where are you kind of between the two at the moment, or where do you see it in terms of a blip or a crisis?
I would say at the moment it's maybe somewhere in the middle, because I think crisis is a bit of a strong word and maybe one that is probably overused in football. Crisis is Man United and West Ham territory. Liverpool have lost 2 games in a week. It's hardly anything near that, because there's plenty of reasons why, and you can say when Isak's fit and when Wirtz is fully formed to the Premier League and when the defence is a bit more used to playing together. It should all be back to normal again. But I think it's more than a blip because it has gone on for the whole season now. It's just the fact that they won games with sugarcoating it all, and you can't really criticise them for the last 4 games of last season after they won the title. But
Yeah,
it's almost like the last 4 games of last season have continued into this season. But as I said, there's a number of reasons why. One that I didn't mention as well, McAllister's not fully fit. I think he's very important to the way the team plays. But I don't think anyone really can say hand on heart that they've played anywhere near their best this season, apart from maybe Alisson, who is now injured.
I've got to ask you about this, and I'm kind of crossing my fingers here. You might be giving us some good news potentially, but the two who have been in good form recently are, of course, Alisson, who's been saving us time and time again, and Hugo Ekitike, the top scorer. And then obviously you think to Galatasaray, and both coming off the pitch. Any updates, anything we've heard on these two at all?
Well, I think those 2 people on the screen are the 2 people that come out of this week with credit, because without Ekitike at Palace, Liverpool looked terrible. And without Alisson in both games, they would have lost both by bigger scores. So, what's going on? So I was just getting text from some of my colleagues there. Sorry, getting distracted. Alisson is probably out for a few weeks, I would say. Maybe more. We're not sure yet. He's got scans today. Ekitike is hopeful that he can be back for Saturday.
Wow.
And he seems to think that it was just a bit of cramp. But I wouldn't quote me on that, because it could easily be that he has to sit out of this game. Alisson, he's been left out of the Brazil squad, so that doesn't look good at all.
No.
But this is why they signed Mamardashvili, so let's see what he can do. But if I was Chelsea, I'd be thinking, if Chelsea, Cole Palmer is injured, isn't he? But if you flip it, and I don't know, I'm trying to think of Chelsea players now, but if some of their best players were suddenly out, which they are, to be fair, Liverpool would be rubbing their hands, and Chelsea would be rubbing their hands, thinking we can have a go at this new keeper. This is debut. Let's see what we can do.
Yeah, it's true. Thank God, though, when we're talking about Chelsea, it isn't Robert Sanchez as the backup. But yeah, you're also right, Ekitike. And I think as people asked about that, and if I'm right, and tell me if I am on this, that actually you spoke to Ekitike in the mix zone as well on the way through. So there's never a guarantee when a player says it, because a scan can reveal different. But was it him that actually said that to you as well?
Well, I actually wasn't there, so I am going off what James Pearce told me, that Ekitike seemed to say that he was hopeful. And also, I would say apparently Alisson was giving the thumbs up to people as he walked out, but I would read into that he was just saying hello.
Yeah, indeed. We'll see what the scans say. And you mentioned a few sort of halves and different bits there, and we always look for patterns at this stage of the season. And there's a lot of wins early on, which is great. But is it fair to say, I mean, scrolling through these and what you've seen, there isn't many complete performances, is there? It's tended to be like a last-minute rescue because of a freak penalty there, maybe a good first half against Atletico, maybe the best first half of the season in the derby, but conceding late on. There's been the odd bit, but it's definitely not been complete performances by any means so far, has it?
No, and obviously it's 7 wins from 9. But if things had gone slightly different, it could have easily be like 2 or 3 wins from 9.
Yeah.
Because Bournemouth could have held on. Newcastle were about 10 seconds from getting a draw. Arsenal was a bit of a dead game where neither team really stood out.
Right.
What other ones are there? Atletico, they fought back. Everton, that was probably the best performance of the lot, but they were only one James Tarkowski header in the last minute away from getting an equaliser, and Burnley could have easily held out for another minute, and the list goes on. It could have easily been, we could have been sat here, obviously it wouldn't have happened like this, but we could have been sat here saying Liverpool have not won a single game, but because they've needed a bit of luck and a bit of individual magic and mistakes from the other team maybe to get through. But yeah, it's Chelsea away is always difficult, so it's not the sort of game you want if you're coming off the back of this run. You'd want a nice little, I don't know, Leeds at home or something like that. So nice little lower half team at home, but it's not how the fixture this has worked out. So I think I'm not sure whether the international break is coming at the right or wrong time, really, because if they lose, then probably it would be nice to sort of just write a line under it. But if they get the win, you'd sort of think, oh, it'd be nice to have another game on Tuesday to get a bit of a run going again. So let's see what happens.
Yeah, it's a big fingers crossed, and probably it's never this simple and it's never this complex. But we will define this period by the Chelsea result, won't we? If we win, it's a blip. We're back to normal. We'll have time on the training ground. If we do lose, and people are going, 3 back-to-back defeats, the word crisis comes into the mix for some, doesn't it, as well? This result will define a lot of what full stop you put on your column for this.
Yeah, it will, and it's a long 10 days of an international break when you go into it on a loss, because you're sort of waiting to get back to football and get back to proving people wrong or whatever. But as I say, Chelsea are missing quite a lot of key players, I think. I'm not sure what the exact list is, but I think the central of defence is looking very light, with Chalobah suspended and Colwell obviously out for a while. Fofana's injured. Someone else is injured. So I think it's the 2 young lads who are going to play there. So they definitely get it. I think it's still Liverpool go into it as strong favourites, but playing away, 5:30 kickoff, Chelsea fans will be up. It's not easy at all.
No, it's not. And like you said, there probably would be someone at home and a fair few other opponents that you'd pick. But I suppose that the final one on this one, before we get into sort of analysing parts of the pitch, it's never an easy game. It's never going to be an easy game to go to Stamford Bridge. But where we are right now, is it maybe not the worst time because of all their injuries? Sometimes timing can be everything, can't it?
Yeah, definitely. And Cole Palmer as well. He's injured, I think. João Pedro's not done much for a few weeks, and Robert Sanchez, the goalkeeper, is not very good at the moment, or maybe ever. So I do think that Chelsea get atable, and I think they lost to, was it Brighton last week? And
Yeah.
did they lose the week before? They lost to United the week before that, did they? At Old Trafford. So yeah, it's a good time to play Chelsea actually, but there'll be someone on Stamford Bridge Index right now saying the exact same thing. It's a good time to play Liverpool, but it'd be a good game for the neutral, I suspect.
Yeah, it could be an interesting one. And the chat panel has got mixed opinions on everything. And chat panel, we will get to you. I will put some of your comments up. I will make sure we do ask Lewis certain things that we're going to get into now. And it is probably right, Lewis, just to sort of look step by step in the team, as people are saying. I mean, the defense, if we start with this, because people are talking about this at the moment, and you even mentioned Ibrahima Konate, but fullback concerns are in the mix. So I kind of want to do this step by step. The defense at the moment, and tell me if you agree on this. One of the big problems seems to be, I mean, we're open at times and we're conceding set piece goals, but the third biggest element is we struggle to progress the ball this season, don't we?
Yeah, yeah, and I think that could be partly to do with McAllister's lack of fitness, shall we call it. and also because of the way the fullbacks are positioned for Liverpool in terms of Trent would play a massive part of the build-up last season and the last few seasons, whereas Bradley and Frimpong are more traditional fullbacks, like to bomb forward and stay wide, whereas Trent would wander inside. And Kerkez is not fully got the hang of things yet, despite a couple of good performances, it must be said. So I think that is a massive problem, and the whole Szoboszlai right back thing I'm not really sold on, but I feel like it does make a bit of sense. But I think Szoboszlai has probably been Liverpool's best or most consistent outfielder this season with Gravenberch. So obviously the big issue is Konate's fitness, and ever since he came online and started criticising fans for criticising. He's proven that any fan was right to criticise him as long as it was, fair. Because he's not been good enough, and I'm sure he can see that. And if he can't see that, then he needs to have a look at himself in the mirror. So I think there's obviously it's only a few days. It's not time for mass panic about Konate, but I think the fact that he's obviously got the Real Madrid saga going on in the background, or the contract saga, means that he gets cut less slack than if someone else was having this poorer run in terms of form. So I would maybe throw in Joe Gomez on Saturday, just because Konate's put in two absolute stinkers in the last 4 or 5 days, and maybe it'll do him well to just have a little sit out on Saturday. And Virgil as well has obviously he's still been good, but by his standards, he's not been near his level. He's made a couple of he's lost a ball a couple of times in sloppy areas. So yeah, I mean, like if Alisson wasn't playing the last 2 games, then Liverpool would have, they would have gone 2-0 down on Tuesday or whatever day it was, and they would have probably been about 3 or 4-0 down at half time at Palace.
Yeah, I mean, we got to unpick some stuff because pretty much there's concerns across the entire backline. And you're right to mention Konate and people asking about Gay, which we'll touch upon in the January window, and the summer just missed out. But I mean, the contract renewal talk, even as you can see there on the screen, it still dominates everything. And got to say a bit of a shout out to our esteemed colleague Sam Maguire, because he's given us permission to use a few of these stills. But there's a little bit, Lewis, of Konate is what he is. We know Konate is never going to be a progressive monster. He's good at certain things, he's not good at others. So we see on the screen that these stills from the Galatasaray game, he's really not got many options on. And this actually ends up where he's looking, I've got nothing. And it turns into a long ball straight to Galatasaray, and we turn over possession. We also look and see, in terms of what are his options, Konate is never, for want of a better phrase, going to pick a pass like a Virgil, spray a diagonal, thread it through the lines. He's not mean he's terrible at passing, but it's just not his game at the same time. And in fact, there's been a bit of a change in build-up at times. I mean, against Arsenal, as well, as Sam highlighted, we tweaked it. We dropped a midfielder in. We sent the fullbacks wide. We brought other full, just to give different options and take that away from Ibou Konate. I mean, there is a case to obviously drop him at, and I get that at the moment because he's dropped 2 stinkers. I don't think there's any debate in that, even the most ardent Konate fan. Have Liverpool got to get a system or something working? Has Arne Slot got to get something working where it's just got to accept the fact that Konate isn't the best passer? How do we work with that?
Yeah, I enjoyed your Jamie Carragher, Gary Neville sort of impressions when you're going through the stills there. Very good. I think it's something someone needs to ask Arne tomorrow or at some point in the next week, because it'll be interesting to see what he has to say about it, because there's clearly a problem, as highlighted in those pictures there. Obviously, last season you would have had Trent in a slightly different position to receive the ball, and in one of the stills, you had Wirtz, who was completely nowhere near. He wasn't anywhere to receive the ball. And obviously, if you do, that one there, Wirtz is in more like on the other side of where the referee is, then he suddenly creates a passing lane, and then that would open up more space for the others. So there's definitely things that Slot needs to work on with that, and I'm sure he is. I'm sure he is seeing exactly what we're seeing there. I'm worrying about it because Liverpool didn't create much at all on Tuesday night. And you can moan about the penalty, and that I don't think it was a penalty, but Liverpool didn't really, in my opinion, do enough to win the game either. So I think obviously the defense has been a big issue the last few games, but in that one I was equally as worried about the lack of chance creation.
Yeah, it just that there was really nothing time and time again. And as we saw, the only things that, unless Florian Wirtz dropped deep or linked it like he did for the cross, Konate was going long. And in his defence, I'm not always sure there was many options on for him. So that's definitely an Arne Slot's inbox. And I mean, you kind of alluded to this. I know you've written about it. Is it a fair shout right now that, I suppose, two questions to you. Is Dominic Szoboszlai Liverpool's best right back right now? And from what we're seeing, do we honestly think Arne Slot fully trusts Bradley and Frimpong?
He can't trust them because he would play them more, I think. Even going back to the summer, really, I was wondering whether he trusted Bradley, because there was people telling me even after they signed Frimpong that they were looking at the Leipzig chap Gertrude, which made me wonder how much he did trust Bradley, and whether he does see Frimpong as a right back in a back four, because he obviously, for Leverkusen and for Holland, plays in a back as a wing back. So I thought Frimpong played well in pre-season and the first game of the season in the Prem.
Yeah.
But I'm not sure if Slot fully trusts him yet in the defensive side of the game. So I do think Szoboszlai is probably the best option at the moment. But then you lose his legs in midfield, off the ball, and creatively. So there's an awful lot of problems, because if you take him out of the midfield, you lose so much. But then if you don't have him at right back, then you've got a Bradley or a Frimpong, whose Slot clearly isn't 100% trustworthy of at this current moment in time.
It is a tough one, and obviously it's something that Slot's still working out. Would you be minded to, because you say Szoboszlai is so important for us as a player, and obviously you want him on the pitch, but it's where. Would you be more minded to push Szoboszlai back into midfield and just accept what you've got with Bradley or Frimpong? Or would you learn towards, well, we're getting no progression, we've lost our cheat code at right back, the closest thing we can get is Szoboszlai in there? Which one are you leaning towards for you?
Yeah, I get the whole argument of, trying to replace the Trent creativity. And I don't mind it, but I'd be tempted to just go back to basics, because last season when Trent was missing or injured or whatever, Bradley was outstanding. So maybe Connor just needs a run in the team to regain his full match fitness, because he's obviously been injured himself, didn't have a proper pre-season, and to regain a bit of confidence again, because he was brilliant. When I think of him just bombing up and down the flank at Anfield on the far side, assisting goals and making big tackles against Mbappe. So I'd be probably still leaning towards give Connor that spot on Saturday, bring Szoboszlai into the midfield, and I'm sure we'll come on to Florian Wirtz, but it's a conversation that needs to be had, whether you drop him, whether you play him on the left, whether you drop McAllister because he's not fully fit.
Yeah.
I'm sure Slot will be mulling over all of these things as well.
Yeah, definitely in his inbox, this one. And I suppose the final thing, a little bit on two things actually. Milos Kerkez, because you mentioned him. when you bought Milos Kerkez from Bournemouth, we all saw why he was bought in terms of the pace, bombing up and down the flank all day, the ability to cross it, which it's important to say we have seen on occasions like that Everton game. He was getting balls in the box, and there's been a few other snippets, but 90% of this season, he seems to be almost attached to Virgil van Dijk's hip almost, doesn't he? Tucked right in and just sort of passing it and recycling. Are you surprised by the way we're using Milos Kerkez right now?
Yeah, but I do, again, I think it comes back to the fact that it's just that there's no balance in the team at the moment, because if he bombs forward and Frimpong is also bombing forward, for example, then you're just so exposed to the counter-attack. And, Gravenberch can sit back all he likes, but it doesn't quite give as much, solidity as you'd still like. If Slot wants to sort of play with maybe a back three out of possession, which he seems to be doing with Kerkez tucking in, and I think there's other ways of doing that, because it might sound a stupid suggestion, but do you play Joe Gomez at right back and he can tuck into a back three, and then Kerkez can bomb down? Thinking how I was watching City Champions League last night, John Stones was at right back, and then it would be a three, and the O'Reilly, the young lad at left back, was basically attached to Doku on the left wing. So it's something that Slot may consider. I'm not sure, but obviously if you do that, then you've got no centre backs in reserve, and that whole problem comes to the fore. So there's quite a lot of whatever situation you think of, whatever scenario you put forward, there's always a negative that sort of looms, and I think Slot will be scratching his head trying to work out how to solve it. But for all the questions that Slot had posed to him last season, he did come up with answers to all of them. So you have to have big confidence that he will put it right in the next week or two.
And Saturday would be a great place to start with the defence. And I suppose the final one on defence, and this is a team one because it's never just the defence, but in terms of how people see it at the moment, especially near the top of the league, Arsenal, all right, they don't score much from open play, but they bag set pieces, and we see that time and time again. Liverpool at the moment, more than ever, are giving up set pieces. You may have probably seen that Michael Reed tweet, as we've given up as many sort of set piece goals as we did by game week 22 in the Premier League last season. It's not just laying it all at Aaron Briggs's door, but he's probably got some work to do. What are you kind of making of the whole set piece situation and what we need to do with this?
Yeah, well, basically, a lot of teams in the bottom half have worked out that if they're good at set pieces, it buys them 10 points a season, pretty much. Palace are definitely one of them.
Yeah,
and they did it very well on Saturday, and they've done it very well for the last, since Glasner's gone in there. Arsenal are obviously the ones that get talked about, but loads of teams are trying wacky long throws and all sorts, and it does it sort of evens out these games. Brentford are very good at it as well. I think Liverpool are playing in 2 or 3 games time in the league.
Right.
So I think Liverpool have got a clear weakness at these set pieces, and it's being exploited. But another thing with the new fullbacks is that they're not exactly big lads. You look at Arsenal, Calafiori, Timber, whoever it is, you'd back them to win headers in the box. Would you really back Kerkez and Frimpong? I'm not so sure. And then the midfield is quite small, other than Gravenberch for Liverpool as well. So when you're defending these set pieces, you haven't really got the big lads that when I was watching the Arsenal-Man City game the other week, we just mentioned Arsenal's big back four, then at City you had Diaz and the big lad O'Reilly and all these other fellas that they had. They've got a big team. Haaland's in there winning headers. Arsenal have got Gyökeres coming back winning headers. Liverpool don't really have that physical presence to defend these set plays. So it's a problem for Aaron Briggs, and I'm sure he'll be doing all he can. But it's a hard game being a set piece manager, because you're either seen as some visionary like Nicholas Jova at Arsenal, or if you're not, if you have the bad luck of conceding a couple, you're all of a sudden on the scrap heap. So it's a tough gig, but I'm sure Liverpool are working on it. But it is a big problem. 4 goals conceded from set pieces already this season. Only West Ham have conceded more, I think. So, and they're obviously, what are they? Second bottom of the table. So it's a worry. Second bottom, there we are.
There is a lot to sort in the defensive side, isn't there? Konate centre-backs progression, making a call at your right back, left back. What are you asking Milos Kerkez to do? There's plenty on Arne Slot's docket. And I mean, as we move into the midfield as well, Lewis, it doesn't really get smaller. There's maybe just a tweak in what Arne Slot's got to sort. And I kind of just think back to last season. You knew what was coming all the time, didn't you? Literally in case of Gravenberch and McAllister in the double pivot, Dominic Szoboszlai in the midfield as the 10, important to say. And now I almost look at what's happened so far this season as well. And I think probably the best half was the Everton game, wasn't it? The first half, 2-1. No coincidence, I think, for many that the starting midfield that day, I'm sure people know, Szoboszlai, McAllister, Gravenberch. But you alluded to it. It's not really been a great start to the season for many reasons, should we say, for Alexis McAllister. Are you almost going thinking tried and trusted a little bit at the moment, that those 3 are established? Because balance is the key word, and we'll get to, Florian Wirtz. But tried and trusted, get your 3 best midfielders in there and go from there.
Yeah, definitely. That's what I do on Saturday, 100%. Just because, as I said earlier, Gravenberch and Szoboszlai have been Liverpool's 2 most consistent outfielders this season. And I say outfielders because Alisson has been so good as well, I think. So yeah, that's exactly what I do this weekend, because the constant changing of it is not really working in Liverpool's favour. If McAllister's not fit, for example, I'd almost be tempted to start Curtis Jones in there. And I know a lot of fans are a bit sick of him at the moment, because he does frustrate fans, and I can see why sometimes. But he can do a good job in that double pivot as well. But yeah, I'd do McAllister, Gravenberch, Szoboszlai, and I'd start how he did against Everton in that first half, because I do think that was the best half of the season. And it was maybe just a bit of Everton just were a bit physical in the second half. Liverpool had come off the back of, they played in the Champions League 3 days before. So I think they just tired, really. I think that was the main problem in that second half. I don't think it was the personnel that was a problem, but this time they've had an extra day to prepare, and they should all be the fitness level should all be a bit better anyway, a few weeks on. So I would do that, and I'd maybe look at starting Wirtz off the left again.
It's an interesting one. And just before we come to Wirtz, and it is a conundrum, we're going to have to get into that one. You mentioned like the double pivot, Curtis Jones coming in, and you're right, because a lot of people picked up on this, that the other night it was Gravenberch and Curtis Jones, wasn't it, the double pivot? And I think something like 80% of their passes were kind of sideways or backwards. They weren't really progressing the ball. It is telling, though, that especially with McAllister's fitness, the way Arne Slot's been moving things, there's not been a settled double pivot this season, whereas last season you were pretty much, it's McAllister and Gravenberch and everything else will work itself out a little bit.
Yeah, there's just none of the team is settled at the moment, because Slot doesn't seem to know what his best team is, and he keeps changing it himself. I think he's tried very, very hard to get Isak up to speed, but I think it's fair to say, based on Tuesday, that he's still quite a way off the boil. Yeah. I think I would 100%, without a doubt, be starting Ekitike on Saturday if he's fit, and there's obviously hope that he is going to be fit. And yeah, in reply to your question on the double pivot, I think that's having a massive impact on the whole team, in terms of what we discussed before with the build-up, but also with the stopping the counter-attacks, which Liverpool seem to be very exposed to creating play at the other end of the pitch. So if they can get, I think the main objective for the next couple of weeks is to get McAllister back up to the fitness levels that he was. But it's basically what it is. It's a little problem that he had in about March that I think he suffered on Argentina duty, that he just never got over it. And they pulled him out of the last 2 or 3 games of last season. He didn't travel to Brighton, didn't play in the final game, didn't do much on the pre-season tour, barely played, he's barely started game this season. It's just a little niggly problem that just won't go away. So it's either a case of they just play him and hope he can just eventually get over it, or they have to just say, let's think of the long run here. Let's take McAllister out for 2 weeks and, give him a proper rest and see how he reacts to that. So I think McAllister is so key to everything that Liverpool do. And at the moment, you're only really getting a 30% of McAllister's best attributes and fitness. So getting him fit is going to be so crucial to the next few results, I think.
Yeah, agreement with you there from many. And I think, when Alexis McAllister is fit, for me, and firing, he's the best midfielder in the Premier League as well. So they have got to make a call, sort of short, maybe even to long term, what they are doing with him, because he's so important. And I mean, the subline is there. You knew this was coming, the Florian Wirtz conundrum. And I think it was telling that in your article, there was a photo of the man himself and Liverpool's 5 big problems. It is the big question right now. As Kenny Dalglish said there on the overlap, once Wirtz connects with those around him, he could open a can of soup, but that's got to happen at some point. We saw flashes, didn't we? We saw the cross from the left. We saw the through ball over the top for Alexander Isak. So we saw parts the other night, but there's others writing about it as well. I mean, Sam Maguire mentions it there, that maybe he's not the cause, he's the victim of it, the system, the instability right now. So that comes in the mix. And even when people look, as you said, he's not in a passing lane there, but I bet you've seen that graphic as well, Lewis, where he's picking up the ball right now. It's, again, a different setup, a different league, a different formation. I get that from Leverkusen, but it's noticeable, the heat map and where he sort of flows in the game. What are you kind of making of the whole Florian Wirtz conundrum as it sits right now?
Yeah, I'm not really sure where to think with it, really, because in some ways I think he has shown really nice glimpses, and in other times I think maybe it's best to drop him, as Jamie Carragher says.
Yeah,
I'd be leaning towards playing him, and eventually he will start to tick. And I do think that once he finds his best level, I do think that he will end up being one of the very best players in the whole league. But he's just struggling to impact games at the moment. He's getting on the ball quite a lot, and he's trying.
yeah,
I think he's almost. It sounds stupid, but I think he's trying a bit too hard to force things, and he's losing the ball quite a lot. But if you look last season at some of the stats around Europe, or maybe it was the season before, of players, if you look at, I think it was him and De Bruyne and Valverde and someone else, the amount of times that they lost the ball was absolutely crazy, because they're always trying that Hollywood pass. And eventually one of them balls that Wirtz tries will come off and everyone will be going, wow. And then the next one will come off and I'll have 2 assists before you know it, and he'll score a goal, because he's nearly scored a few goals. He's gotten into some good areas, and he's just not had the rub of the green. There was one on Tuesday where he just didn't quite connect with it and the keeper saved it. But it is, it's hard for Wirtz, because he's also got to beef up to the Premier League, because it's a completely different ball game to the Bundesliga, and Slot has spoke to him about that, about beefing up and how he can be better prepared to play 3 games in a week. And it's just, he's not quite well, actually, in pre-season, him and Salah seem to be linking up really well, and now all of a
Yeah,
sudden they can't seem to find. It's like they've never played a single second together before. So, and also he's not got a settled. Whoever's in front of him isn't settled. Gakpo hasn't done much at all since the first two games of the season.
yeah.
So that's why I'd be tempted to start Florian on the left, and see what he can create from out wide on Saturday, and then eventually, when he's a bit more bulked up to the Prem, he can start to come into the middle, start affecting games, picking up the ball, and running the show as he should. But he's been way from his best, as has everyone, including Salah as well. So I think the price tag obviously means that every single thing he does gets micro-analysed.
True.
I don't think he's been quite as bad as some people say, but there's definitely several levels for him to go up before we can say he's playing well.
Yeah, and it's funny because you even mentioned stats, and even as Opta's referenced on this image, Opta obviously released their tweet and the stats that Florian Wirtz has actually created the most chances in the Premier League this season as well. So that comes into the mix. And there's a debate on this because, of course, in a different formation as heat map even, it's going to look different from Leverkusen as it did to us. But he seems to be coming deep quite a lot to pick up the ball, whereas it's never this simple. But surely we want Florian Wirtz in the dangerous areas to cause the most, hassle for the opposition. Do you think he's coming deep by design, or is it just that is he given a free role almost, or what are you putting it down to at the moment?
I think he's coming deep because he is desperate to win the game. He just wants to get on the ball more. He's just coming to try and impact the game as much as he can. I'm not really. I've asked Slot a couple of times what he wants Wirtz to be doing.
Yeah,
and I'm not really sure what the answers. The answers haven't really told me too much. He said the nice line the other week about how he's like an artist with a mean streak as well, but we're not quite seeing that artistry yet. He's clearly trying, and he's, as I said a minute ago, he's playing passes that maybe aren't even on just to try and get a lucky break. But I think all Liverpool need to just sort of go back to basics a little bit after a bruising week, and obviously Wirtz is the player that's been singled out by most people. People are criticising him, and that was to be expected given how much he cost. But I still have a lot of faith that Florian this side of Christmas will come good and start winning games on his own sort of thing.
Yeah, absolutely. And I suppose it is important to say this on a positive because we have seen the moments like that Galatasaray we mentioned. There was a brilliant cross where I'm not really sure what Conor Bradley did. He kind of closes his eyes and it hits his face almost a little bit. And there's the knock over the top for Isak, which he kind of shins as well. Those stand out, like you said, didn't quite connect with that half volley. But you are starting to see signs and little things that, are pointing in the right direction. Will he benefit from a settled position as much? Because sometimes he's been 10, then he's left and he's tucked in, and the foot, we do seem to be changing it. But people will say settled position, but left, not 10. Will that help him, do you think?
Yeah, he'll benefit from playing in the same position every week, and it'll also benefit from playing with the same forwards every week. So when Isak is on full, when he's up to full fitness, then I think them two will start linking up nicely because Isak and Ekitike are very different forwards, and Ekitike's been absolutely brilliant. One of Liverpool's best. I think of all the new signings, he's been the best one so far. But Isak is a midfielder's dream in terms of the runs he makes off the ball, and Wirtz is the sort of player that can pick him out.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of things that Wirtz will benefit from. I think another thing he will benefit from is going away on international duty. Not sure who Germany are playing, but he'll be, he's the main man for Germany, and maybe that'll be good to get his confidence back up, see some of his mates. he's a young lad who's moved to a new country. So there's, it's not easy for anyone. Never mind when you've got so much pressure on your back from being a 100+ million pound player.
Yeah.
So I do think he'll go good, but he'll come good soon. But it's when you've lost 2 games, these things come into more the forefront of the conversations, really. And if he can influence Saturday, then everyone will forget about the first 10 games or whatever it's been.
Yeah, fingers crossed. There's a lot to sort in midfield. A settled midfield. Wirtz on the left is what's being pushed for at the moment. And if Wirtz is to go on to the left, and you mentioned it a little bit, part of that is to get the attack firing, because there's no other way of putting it. There has been serious investment in this attack. As you said, Ekitike, £70 million or so. We all know the huge British record price tag for Alexander Isak. And we should start, really, this is why we're maybe hoping it is good news. Hugo Ekitike so far has been brilliant. And I thought he was really good up to the substitution as well.
Yeah, he was Liverpool's best attacker, I thought, on Tuesday. And they missed him at Palace as well on Saturday after that silly red card. And he was very good in the press conference before as well. He seems like quite motivated, nice guy, quite charismatic as well. But yeah, he links up the play so well. There's some nice little back heels and little flicks, and he probably should have done better with that one where he tried to ram the keeper just before they scored, and Gakpo sort of kneed it into that guy on the line. But he was getting in good areas and making things happen. Then he just seemed to overstretch for a ball, which actually looked quite nasty in terms of the fact he went down straight away. I did think that was his hamstring gone as well as Alisson, but he sort of seemed to indicate that it was just cramp. So let's wait to see what Slot says in the morning on that one. But I would 100% be starting him on Saturday if he's fit enough. And then obviously there's also a hope that Chiesa will be back fit after Slot claimed that he was injured as well.
Yeah, we'll leave the Chiesa one alone because the conspiracy theorists will be jumping on that, but we will talk about setup. And I suppose you wouldn't have missed this. Isak comes on, and obviously it's a nice first link up, and you thought he looks lively. But aside from that shot, 3 touches in Istanbul from that. I get he's got fitness issues. They've almost got to get him more involved quickly, haven't they, if they're going to play him?
Yeah, I was thinking about this last night. As I said, I was watching that City game on the Champions League. At half-time, Haaland had 7 touches, but he scored 2 goals.
Yeah.
So, there's that way of looking at it. If Isak had put away that chance, no one would be talking about, he's only had 4 touches. It's just they do want to get him more involved though, because he's meant to be a complete striker. But as I said earlier, I do just think that maybe the road to full fitness is a little bit longer than we all hoped and thought it might have been. Maybe a bit longer than Slot thought it might have been. Because he does look off the pace at the moment, I do think. Similar to McAllister in a way. In terms of, he's not fit, so he can't, his ability's not there. Obviously got his goal against Southampton, but I would have scored that goal, so you can't really credit him too much for that. So there's work to do for Isak, and hopefully he'll get some minutes for Sweden next week as well, which will be good for everyone's case. But I think you've also got to point to the fact that Salah's not been fully on it this season, and if he was, then I'm sure the service would have been better. We mentioned Gakpo a minute ago, not been at his best, so maybe it's an issue with the lack of service, but also he's not actually played that much, Isak, so in the league at least. So I would be Ekitike to start, and then Isak if a goal's needed late on to come off the bench.
It does seem to be building into, for the forward line, rotation for those 2 at the moment. I've not really seen you on the record for this, and I could be wrong, so you can correct me. Thoughts on Isak and Ekatike together potentially?
Yeah, I don't think I've been on the record with that because I'm not really sure because Slot does seem quite wedded to his formation. So unless it's Ekatike off the left, I'm not sure when he will do that, especially from the start of the game. I think he could easily do that in game if they need a goal. Slot is very bold with his substitutions and systems when they need a goal, to be fair. But yeah, it'd be interesting to see how they do. They obviously played together for about 4 minutes the other night, I think it was.
Yeah.
And that would have been very interesting to see. But obviously, Ekatike then went off injured. So, yeah, it's one to consider because Ekatike does have that all-round creative side of his game as well. So they could link up well together. Actually, I'll be interested to see it, and hopefully we do get to see it at some point in the next month.
Yeah, I think we'd all wouldn't mind just maybe select the right game in the right moment, but just seeing a bit of an insight into how that could work, if it would work at all. And this almost feels sacrilege because I'll be on record with this. Mo Salah is my favourite player, Player of the Year, Ballon d'Or contender. Record needs no introduction at the moment. But I mean, there's been various articles on it like this. Is Sam Maguire wrote, he's not washed, he's being wasted by Liverpool so far this season. And the numbers almost seem to have just been chopped in half. People have talked about, is he fading? Is it the way he's being used? Like Liverpool can't be Salah FC and Wirtz FC. It's a compromise. What have you made of the whole Mo Salah situation and what people are saying?
Yeah, I said to my editor yesterday we should do a big read on what's wrong with Salah because I don't think it's really been mentioned that much, just how much his numbers have dipped. So in the last 10, this might be slightly wrong, but 10 or 11 games of last season, he only scored 4 goals, which considering he scored 30 plus and assisted 25 plus, can't remember the exact numbers. But considering he did all that, that was a poor end to the season. And he started this season, he scored against, what was it, Bournemouth, was it, or Newcastle? He scored against Burnley. He's not been firing, has he? Let's put it that way. But he's also not been creating either, which, you know, was 50% of the reason why he was the best player in the Prem last season and rightly won the award and probably should have at least done better in the Ballon d'Or. But he's been way off it since he signed his contract in March. I'm not saying the two things are linked, but it did seem like that was the time that it all started to dip slightly. And you know, he came off the bench on Tuesday and didn't really affect the game at all. So I think there's a number of reasons for it, and one of them is the whole conversation we've been having about the balance of the team and are the fullbacks getting in his way? How much is he missing Trent behind him? Is the fact that Wirtz is now meant to be the creative hub of the team affecting him? How is he linking up with the new strikers? Where last season you'd have a less traditional number 9 in a Diaz or a Darwin or a Jota. This season you've got an out-and-out number 9 and an Isak or an Ekatike, and how does that affect the wingers? There's loads of questions, and you can also probably fairly ask, is age starting to catch up with him because he's, 30, nearly 34, and he's going to be missing for at least 5 or 6 games in the New Year period. And I looked at them fixtures earlier: Arsenal away, Tottenham away, Fulham away. They're tough games. I mean, every game in the Prem is tough, but 3 trips to London without Salah, plus if they're in the Carabao Cup semis, it'd be missing them, missing the FA Cup third round, missing a couple of home games as well. Salah's not going to hit the levels he did last season, but you know, he's not even getting halfway to that at the moment. So it is a worry, and maybe again another question for Slot tomorrow: what's going on? Why is this happening? I'm not really sure the answer, but it's definitely a worry.
Yeah, and I think hopefully Arne Slot can work it out. One thing we all know is that Mo Salah is absolutely going to be in that Chelsea lineup, having been rested for midweek. Fingers crossed, this debate becomes redundant quite quickly. But the other forward, and you mentioned him before, out of everyone who's gone into a new signing, a change position, all the things that are coming up, Cody Gakpo is left wing still, first choice. It all seems open for him. He signed a new contract and he gets a great goal on the opening day. You will argue, or people will, that he gets a couple of assists against Newcastle, but they're not sort of traditional assists. It's more about the goals, the strikes. And to be honest, Lewis, since then, I'm really clutching at a notable Gakpo impact. In fact, we're usually seeing him coming off thinking, well, he's not really done much today. What have you kind of making of Gakpo so far? Is he even missing having some real competition? And with the greatest respect to Rio and Gamoa, not a 17-year-old kid nipping at his heels.
Yeah, but he does have a lad who's come off the bench last week and scored in Chiesa, and come off the bench at Bournemouth and scored and did very well in the Carabao Cup. I honestly would have started Chiesa in the Champions League this week if he was fit, and I don't want to get into the Chiesa conspiracies, but Gakpo he started the season very well in the first two games, and I was thinking, oh, fair enough. All the talk has been about the new attackers and all the money spent, and Salah's the main man still, but Gakpo showed just why his merits as well. But since then, he's not done anything at all really, and it's so frustrating to watch. And I feel like he never wants to do a man on the outside. He's always cutting back and playing it back to the left back. He's a strange one, Gakpo, because when he's playing well, you're thinking like, wow, he's really, really good. And when he's not, you're thinking, what does he offer to the team? And Luis Diaz has scored 3 and 5 for Bayern in the Bundesliga. And when Diaz left, everyone was happy with the price tag, and it was a good price tag, so you can't really revise that. But if Luis Diaz was here now, I would be sat here saying he needs to start on Saturday. And Rio Ngamoa obviously got his goal and had some nice flashes in the Carabao Cup, but I don't think Ngamoa should be playing more than in the cups and 10 minutes off the bench when Liverpool have already won the game, because he's just too young. He's obviously very, very good and he's got the world at his feet, but he's just too young to impact games like that. So hopefully, to bring it back round to Chiesa, hopefully Slot does trust Chiesa, because I worry that he doesn't trust Chiesa. And yeah, let's see what happens. But much more is needed from Gakpo, definitely.
I think, there's a lot more needed from Gakpo, probably a few bits from other, but I would agree with that. Chiesa, and we won't go down the rabbit hole that everyone wants to go to about the minor injury, but there is a lot to consider in the forward line, which there's a lot to consider in all positions. But I'm going to quote you on this because I've built your lineup for Saturday, and you need to tell me if I'm wrong on this anywhere, Lewis. So Marmadashvili with Alisson being out, Van Dijk, Kerkez at left back, Connor Bradley, you went right back. Would you give Gomez a row over Konate?
Yes, probably, yeah. I think he deserves. I don't think Konate could have any complaints.
Yeah, it'd struggle to
The only
argue.
thing I would say is if Slot wants to, if he thinks that dropping Konate would be very bad for his confidence long term, but I would still go with Gomez if I was picking the team right now.
Yeah, you can definitely make that case. And the midfield, obviously subject to fitness again. Szoboszlai, McAllister, Gravenberch, get the old band back together, as they'd say.
Yep, definitely, 100%.
Which then means if he's fit, and again, we're obviously waiting for Slot tomorrow morning. If he's fit, Ekitike in the middle, Salah on the right. Is it Florian Wirtz on the left for you?
I would be tempted to start Chiesa, but the fact he's injured, apparently, means that I would start Wirtz out there. And then you're suddenly looking at some very nice subs. Isak off the bench, Chiesa off the bench, Gakpo off the bench. It suddenly looks a little bit more balanced. Frimpong could come on as well. So that's my 11, definitely.
I wouldn't mind that. I would be behind that completely. So there we go, ladies and gents. I told you we get our money's worth for him. We've got everything on Honest Lot's inbox. We looked at the defence. We looked at the midfield. We looked at attack. In simple terms, there is a lot for Honest Lot to sort. But if you get a positive result in this game at the weekend, it's amazing how things can change very, very quickly. And maybe, as Lewis said, an international break coming up might not be the disaster it once seemed. All it leaves me to say is ever for Lewis for answering all the questions, moving a 1 o'clock Zoom call, half ignoring comments or texts from journalists and other people. It is massively appreciated as ever.
Thank you, sir. A pleasure as always.
And ladies and gents, that's AI special for Anfield Index.